Hey guys, hope you're well, and welcome to HTML Basics, where we will be covering the fundamentals of HTML and taking you from beginner and trying to spit some knowledge along the way. First, we'll start with a brief summary of what HTML is. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, and it is the standard markup language for documents to be designed, displayed, and viewed online in a browser in a nice, clear format, and it helps create the structure of the web page overall. Let's briefly cover the advantages and disadvantages of HTML, and then we'll get into creating our first mini project. So, to the advantages. HTML is good code for noobs or beginners to start with, as it is fairly easy to learn and nice to begin with. HTML helps us build the structure or spine of the website, and it is light and easy to load and can also assist with storage of big files. Every browser supports HTML. This includes Chrome, Edge, Firefox, DuckDuckGo, or whatever browser you choose to browse with. It works really well with other languages such as CSS and JavaScript, but we'll cover those later as this is a purely HTML course. The advantages or strengths of HTML are also really its weaknesses, because HTML can only create static and plain pages. So if we want dynamic pages, then HTML isn't really that useful. To create dynamic pages, we need CSS and JavaScript. Also, because of the simpleness of HTML, the security features offered are limited to non-existent, meaning our website won't be that secure. As mentioned previously, a typical website is built with HTML first as the structure or spine, CSS to make it look nice and fancy, and then JavaScript to then make the website function and do the things we actually want it to do. And so overall, HTML is a fairly good place to start with structuring the spine of our website. Okay, and with that brief summary out of the way, let's get into creating our first HTML website. For this topic, and most topics going forward, I will be using Visual Studio Code to code my project. I am of the opinion that to learn, it is best to practice, practice, practice. So if you'd like to practice and learn, you can follow along by going to your browser, typing in Visual Studio Code for Mac or Windows or whatever, and then following the instructions on the Visual Studio Code website, and then downloading it when it hits downloads in your computer. And so then, if you go to your local document finder, create a new folder, then I'm going to title it HTML, and then create that. Then if we go to Visual Studio Code, we press open, we then follow the link. I put mine in documents, so I'm going to go to documents, HTML, and then we press open. Now, whenever we save anything here in Visual Studio Code, it will go to our HTML folder. Alright, so now that we've set up the folder and we're in Visual Studio Codes, we will need to set up a file for our HTML. That can be done by either right-clicking or clicking here where it says New File. You click New File, we're going to label it index.html, as this is standard practice really for a basic HTML file. And so you'll see when you first open Visual Studio Code, you'll get this message where we can open with chat, select a language, or we can create a template. If we click select languages, we can see all the languages such as C++, F#, Java, JavaScript, JSON, HTML, PPH, and a whole bunch of others such as Swift and XSL. We won't be dealing with all of these at the moment, we'll just be dealing with HTML. But because we put index.html in the file, this is not necessary as the HTML language has already been set up when we set up the file initially. Alright, so let's get coding. So if you type in the less than symbol, an exclamation mark, and then in capital letters, doc type, spelled correctly, HTML, and then the closing tag or the greater than tag. Now, the greater than and less than are what symbolize tags, and they allow us to structure the spine of the website. Then, if we do the same, but within the tags, we do HTML for the first one, and then a / HTML for the second one. The / signifies the closing tag and signifies that the tag that we're in has finished. Then we'll create the head tags, and first of all we'll indent so it makes it easier to read, and we will do the head tags, which is again needing an open bracket and a closing bracket. And you can see by the / that once we leave or finish or go past this tag, we would have finished the head section. Then we will move on to the body, which is the main text and is what we see when we open the website. So once again, we will put it in tags, and once again, to finish the body, we will need an opening and closing tag. And of course, the closing tag is signified by this /. So then once we've created this, we can then put whatever text in here will be shown in our browser. So to see our project come to life, we will go back to the folder and then open the file, and we will open, and in this case I've decided to open it with Google Chrome. So everything we put in our code should, once it's saved, appear here. So if we go back to our code and then within the body, we can type whatever we want and it will appear in our browser once we've saved it. Now, to be able to save it, you will see here there is a white dot by index.html. This signifies in Visual Studio Code that the document has not been saved. So if we press Command S or Control S on Windows, this will disappear and we will have the document saved properly. Now, it is best practice to put the browser next to your project like this, so anything we save in here will be saved in the browser, and we can compare side by side to see how our code looks in the browser itself. So enough yapping, and let's get to it. If in the body we type in "this is my first website," and then we save, see the white dot go from a white dot to an X, that means we've saved it. And then we can then move this Explorer to hide and make the code more visible. You'll also see that we can click this and we can get the Explorer right back. We can also press Ctrl B as a shortcut to be able to see the Explorer rather than having to do this or click the Explorer button manually. Then if we click refresh, we'll see here that we have the code, or sorry, the text we typed in, and this is my first ever website, all because we put this in the body. Then if we want to, we can add even more text, such as, I don't know, let's say this is amazing, because it truly is amazing. We can put something in our code, and then once we save it, and then once we refresh the browser, we can get "this is amazing" text. Now you'll notice that even though we put them on different lines, they are on the same line in the browser. This is because this is the way that HTML text is formatted, and no matter how many spaces you put in your code, it will appear here. You will need things such as break liners or break BR tags to be able to do this. Now we will move on to changing the tab titles. See here it's titled as index.html, which is what we titled our first project in VS Code. Now to change a tab, we need to go to the head section of the HTML section, and we will need to use the title tag, which again you use the greater than and equal symbols, and of course title is a closed tag, so we will need a / to close the title tag. Then if we type in without any spelling mistakes, "this is my first website," again, I know, well, maybe first ever website, I know it's pretty outgoing and pretty creative for the titles I've put. But anyway, if we then save it, then go back to our browser, we click refresh, and we can see here that our tab has changed to "This is my first ever website," all because we put it in the title tags and within the head section of our code. And so there you have it. We've now created our first ever HTML project with the doctype HTML tag, the HTML tags, and within the HTML tags, the head and the body. Now, I would like to show you one more thing, and that's a shortcut, because in coding, shortcuts and not repeating yourself is very important. So if you type in exclamation point and then click the first one, we will then get a slightly more detailed version of the HTML structure that we just created. Still, we have the doctype HTML, the HTML tags, the head tags, and the body tags. But you'll notice in here we have these things called meta tags, which are void tags, and they're void tags because they don't have any closing tags. You'll see there we have meta charset and meta the name. Then it creates the title tags for us, and then we can put in the body whatever we want. And you'll see here that once we save in the code and then we go back to our browser and click refresh, you'll see the body of the browser has disappeared and our tab title has changed to document, which is the title here. So if we change this back to "This is my first ever website," and then in the body, if we then, before the body, if we save and then refresh the website, once again we will have "This is my first ever website." Then we can put in something like "Hello World" into the body, and then once we save, obviously we can click Control S or do it this way by going to File, Save, and then we go to the browser and click refresh, and then once again you'll see we can have the text that we put in there. So it works the same way, but you only have to press exclamation mark and then you get all this extra code. And the meta codes essentially allow for the display and the structure of the website to be in a more neat format. However, I would recommend that you don't type in the exclamation point when you're learning, as typing the HTML structure out manually can help you learn and will help you get into the mindset of tags and HTML tags and head tags. Whereas if you were just to put the exclamation point, then you may miss some things that you otherwise would have realized if you had typed it in manually. Alright, so then once you do that again, we will have finished our first HTML project. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.